Paige Niesis is Jonah. She's been with Liquidnet since 2003, and she was their very first project manager. She works a lot with their sales planning teams as well as their global business process teams. Brian Talley spent a lot of his career working in the securities industry, working on improvement in the New York Stock Exchange. Lord knows they've needed it. We see the big impact you've had recently.
Oh. Oops.
No, it has, actually. He had the last 2 months. Brian has been involved with helping the founding of Liquidnet University and is working in terms of, with Paige to bring this alive. He's also a Jonah. And would you help me welcome them?
Thank you very much. It's much different standing here than sitting there. Can I do this from over there? So have any of you ever seen this quote before? Einstein? He says, "We can't solve the problems with the same kind of thinking we used when we created them." I love this quote. I think it completely exemplifies what the thinking process is all about. Typically, when people are faced with a situation, they use whatever thinking comes naturally to them to solve that challenge. And it's what's instinctual to them, and they use the same thing over and over again. It's not necessarily always the best logic, but it's what comes natural. Liquidnet is a company no different than most companies that also does that. You fall back onto what you know. So Ready, Fire, Aim is the title of our presentation just for that reason. Our company is a company that acts largely on instinct and intuition and then wants to jump right in. Someone's got a thought, we want to move forward really fast and get it done. Very results-oriented and delivery-oriented. And there's a lot of great things about that, but it's not necessarily the best way to get it right the first time. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about our exposure to the thinking process, which is one of the techniques under the theory of the constraints, what we've done with it since we've learned it, and share some of our lessons learned with you. So let's get into it. First of all, who is Liquidnet? Liquidnet was formed about 10 years ago, startup company, as I said, did stuff fast. Someone has an idea, it's a tight-knit group, you just go ahead and you're able to make change very, very fast. You don't think through all the details, and you really have a good confidence that you're going to be able to figure out whatever comes up and faces you. That was great when it was one product in one region. But then today, we're a company that is multiple products, multiple regions, 30-plus markets, 400 people as opposed to maybe the 30 that started it out. And it's a very short period of time. What the company soon realized is, back when you were so small, you could do that kind of off-the-cuff thinking and implementation. But when you're this big, well, for us this is big, when you're this big, you really have to think through things. There's a lot more ramifications and dependencies and assumptions and built-in behaviors that have already been identified as people have started to use your products. I didn't mention this, but what we do is we are an institutional broker-dealer. Basically, if you've got 1 million shares that you want to trade, you would use our software to connect with those other people that are looking to trade 1 million shares. So it's all over software. There are behaviors that are built in, and we needed to make some changes and understand how it was going to impact people. We needed to really think through things more clearly and completely instead of just going off of our gut. So we learned about the theory of constraints. You've heard this spoken about earlier today, but it's about how do you make that significant, sustainable bottom line improvements. And it asks you to take a look at 3 questions and gives you some techniques to answer them. What to change to, and how to cause that change. And the way we got introduced to it was a very grassroots effort. One person in the company read the book. He told his manager, who told the CIO, who told the leadership group, and then the whole entire leadership team actually read the goal as a book club selection. They were pretty excited about it. They said, this is manufacturing, it's not really the business that we're in, but that line of thinking, we could kind of see some parallels. Let's make this happen here. And that's actually a great example of how things work at our company. Someone's got an idea. The instinct is, this is something that we could do. We don't know how we're going to do it, or who it's going to do it, or how long it's going to take, or what's the best way to do it, but someone will figure that out. I had just moved into a process improvement role, and so it fell in my lap. It fell nicely under that category, and I now had to figure out, how do you do this? Who do you go to? What do you do next? How is it going to actually work here? I did some research, found out about AGI, and I actually got first exposed to it during this conference just a couple of years ago. And at that time, I really did connect with it and realized there's something here. There's something we need to find more about. So we read we read It's Not Luck, and we realized that's where the answer lies. And through talking to Susan, we recognized that the great next step would be to go and get trained in the Jonah Program. So 4 of us went to the Jonah Program. It was tough. You know, if anyone asks you, it's 2 full weeks. And it's not just during the day. It's in the evenings. You're doing homework. You've got your project that you want to work on because you really want to go back and understand this stuff, right? So we worked hard building stuff like that. And of course, we did some of our best work at the local New Haven places. But it really was grueling, but it was worth it. Through that, we learned these new techniques, and we realized that it changed us in so many ways. When we came back, there were comments made about how we were interacting and how we were participating in meetings and functions. People were saying, wow, what happened to you at that training? You really are thinking differently, right? There is something different about you. So whether we realized it or not, it really changed the way that we were processing information. We learned how to look at things in that more complete way. You guys know what this says, right? Well, can you read that box over there? But this is the concept of you're looking at things from one point of view. And when you go through this process, you start to understand there's a tremendous relationship with all of the other things that are going on around you and around the other projects in that company. And by being able to get out of your head these things in a pictorial format, you understand it so much more completely. And you can start to bring others in and help them understand it more completely. And they can bring their knowledge in and add to it and bring other perspectives in. It was so valuable. So our first lesson learned, build a library, stock it with Goldratt books, and then have your CEO start an Oprah-style book club. Word is going to travel like wildfire if you do that. But before, you did hear from the Lieutenant Colonel that he said the same thing. You really want your leadership team to read the book and start to get them exposed to it, and that's when it's going to start to catch on. Specifically for us, the book that had the most impact was It's Not Luck, and that's the one that focuses on the thinking process. The other lesson we learned was to send more than one person. We had the luxury or the ability to send 4, and I wouldn't say that that's necessarily the right number for everyone, but it was tremendous. It was 4 people from different parts of the organization who really hadn't worked together in much capacity before that point, and it was amazing. We really couldn't have done it on our own. You are learning new tools and techniques and a new language and a new way of thinking. You need that support to come back and be able to say, what was that whole CRT thing again? And how did you make that IO map? And oh, remember those UDIs? You need someone that just gets you when you're saying this stuff. It's also the different views and the different pieces that people are taking away from it. So I highly recommend that. So then we come back from training, and there's all this energy and excitement around it. You know, our CEO could not be more excited. People on the streets were making banners for us. They were so excited. And we were like, all right, we've got to now do something with this. We just went off. We've got to do something with this knowledge. So what is it? Well, while our CEO is on the leadership team and he may think that he's the only person that matters, he's not. And we had to actually now go and pitch the whole leadership team to say, hey, we learned this, and we've got to do something with this. There's a real opportunity for us here. So this is an actual slide from the presentation we put together for them. We tried to relate it to the way things work today, and the way things that were working were good. And it's not that they were bad, it's just that they weren't as good as they could be. So I said our company works very heavily on instinct, what feels right, and that instinct is very, very good. But how great would it be if you actually took that instinct and put a good thinking process around it so that in the end, you're not just shooting from the hip, you know where it is you want to go and more about how you're going to get there and what you're going to run into. Also from instinct, people just make decisions and then they walk out of that meeting and they forget why they made that decision, right? So there's no documentation. The people who weren't in that room don't have the benefit of being part of making that decision. They have no idea what went on behind those closed doors. That was kind of a stumbling block for us. Using the thinking process, you've got those maps that really help people understand, how did you get there? How did you decide this is what we have to do? And what else might be missing from it that we are able to go and implement? You all know those people that sit there and whenever someone raises up an idea, they're going, yeah, but did you think of this? Hey, but what about that hole over there? I bet you didn't think of that. Every company has them. We have them too. And that certainly is a source of frustration of anyone that's trying to deal with them. This tool gives you the ability to take those people who are raising those really valid points, right? They are raising things that you do want to think about and incorporate into your planning. And it gives you a way of bringing them into the process and engaging them and then making them part of coming up with a solution. So instead of them just being that person that sits in the corner complaining and tries to poke holes, you get to invite them in and say, great point. What do you think we should do about that? I don't know if any of you are familiar with the concept of postmortem or retrospective. That's typically where at the end of a project, you look back and say, what could we have done better? What would we do differently? What should we have known about that we didn't know beforehand? Those are great tools, and this isn't meant to replace that, but the thinking process is actually very much like what's called a pre-mortem, which is before you actually start the project or before you actually implement it. Think through those questions of what might we run into, which things do we have to deal with, and start to plan for them so when they come up, you're able to just kick it into gear. You know what to do. It's much more natural. So we went in, and they're like, all right, you sold us on the ideas, now what? And we said, aha, we've got some really small but very meaningful projects. We want to get started. 2 weeks of training doesn't make us an expert, even though we lived and breathed it for those 2 weeks. So we came up with a list of some suggestions. They said, are you kidding me? Those things are nothing. Why would you choose anything but the most important project that we've got going on right now? So they really turned the spotlight back to us. They're like, go ahead, you think you're all that? Try out the biggest project that we've got going on. We have this product called Supernatural that was placed out into the market, and it was doing well. It was our fastest growing product, but it was one that it wasn't growing at the rate that leadership expected it to grow at. They said, you're so smart, 2 weeks of training, Jonahs. We want you to go ahead and in 3 months, triple the growth that we've seen. All right? Take that. So now we're presented with a challenge. We know that we do believe in the thinking process, and we want to show the value of the thinking process working at Liquidnet. So in order to do that, you need to show results quickly. And to do that, it would be really wise to hire professionals, because we're just going to be stumbling all over the place with the intimidation factor and trying to keep using those techniques that we just learned. However, in order to show the thinking process working, we needed to prove that we were able to actually learn those techniques and that you don't have to always bring someone in from the outside. So we felt like we needed to do it ourselves. And this is something called a cloud. Again, for those of you who have read It's Not Luck, this would be familiar from the diagrams in the book itself. We recognized that hiring professionals was in direct conflict with actually doing it ourselves. So what were we to do? Well, aha. The thinking process actually teaches you to look at conflicts that you're facing in this way. It really boils it down to you, to the essence of what it is that's in front of you. And we realized that we needed to show results quickly. We also needed to demonstrate our prowess, our knowledge in the techniques. And maybe there actually was a way to do both, and that's what we found out. We realized that we could hire AGI, we engaged them to come and help us out with the project, and we worked it out with them where we would make sure that we would have some opportunities to shine and show our abilities. So it really was a partnership, and it solved that conflict and allowed us to meet both of our needs. It was great. So the lessons learned from this part are dive in right away. When you learn something, it's one of those use it or lose it. You've got to keep using those techniques so they become more and more familiar and you create new habits with them. And also don't be afraid to take on those big projects, because there is help out there. AGI was a tremendous help when we were implementing our project and thereafter. So Brian's actually going to take you through what actually happened with that project and its engagement.
So So I used my time at the Jonah Program to improve learning and development at Liquidnet, my primary responsibility. And I thought it was really a game changer for me. It was amazing. But I felt that this project we were starting was the equivalent of going all in. If you read It's Not Luck, it was almost a save the plant mentality, though my legal department does not want me to say that. We couldn't put it on the slides. The company wasn't in trouble, but this new product was supposed to take off. It was called Supernatural. So our team, we gathered to bring it up to the level that it should be, based on our perception of the value of it, was why we called it the Supernatural Ascent. So we had identified it was a market constraint. With our electronic trading system, for the product, you could almost as simply add new servers to the system, and you could do many more trades. So that wasn't a constraint. But the market, seeing the value of our offer, was our constraint. So from the goal, we wanted to get those Bucky Burnside orders in and really please our customers to get more and more business in. So we gathered experts from across the company who had the intuition on the various areas. And as Paige mentioned, we had Susan Berglund and David Berglund really help us to facilitate and make sure we're getting on the right track. So as we had the experts arrive for our workshop, we found, of course, that each one of them had an idea of what the problem was. The problem is this, the problem is that, and that's it. As we looked into it, they were all right, but none of them was completely right. This is what I mean. Some people said, this product is great, it's just not getting the marketing support it needs, and those people in marketing need to change what they're doing. Others said, you know, the problem is not really that, the problem is that when something goes wrong or a customer asks about this product and how it's operating, we can't get the information right away. We can't support them, and that makes them lose confidence in our offering, and they're not giving us more and more business. Still, other people said, you know what, all those things are minor issues. It's really the fact that our sales team does not have the confidence, doesn't seem to have the ability to go out and sell this thing, so it's them. As Chief Warrant Officer Willis mentioned, people love to point to the other guy and say, it's them, it's them, it's them. Well, when we gathered people in a room for 4 days of intensive workshop sessions, the Jonahs and the Berglunds worked hard in between to make things move along as fast and as accurately as we could. When we got them all in the room, we quickly laid out all the issues, as you see in this map of intermediate objectives. And really, if you look at the color coding, they did group into 3 areas. And to have a complete solution, to really make a change here, you would need to address all of these areas. Now, many of you may have this similar situation where in your companies people are saying, really, that's the problem. That's all you have to do is fix that. Bringing them together, letting them see that this is a system dependent on each other, we need to fix all of it, was really just a huge aha for us. And since we had people in the room together, they had to accept it. So it was really amazing. We realized we had to make all these things better in order to make it happen. Now, the issues that are going on are not there. If they were easy to change, then we would have fixed them already. The problem is that they're held in place by conflicts. So looking at that sales confidence branch of the issue, we found a core conflict of our sales team at the time. In order to be successful, if you're on the sales team, you feel, I must sell all of our offerings. In order to sell all of our offerings, I must sell the newest, Supernatural. At the same time, in order to be successful, I as a salesperson must sell what I'm confident in. So I must sell what I'm familiar with, which was our standard offerings that had a few years track record. It was easier for them to sell the value. This led to them pretending they were on board and trying in some ways to sell the Supernatural, but it just wasn't taking off, at least as much as we thought. And we saw that really what was behind that lack of confidence on their part. It was their understanding. It was feeling that it's supported in the customer service side. And we also surfaced the fact that they don't have a reason to touch base with their members. We call them our customers members. They don't have a reason to stay in contact with them all the time to keep building that relationship on Supernatural, but they did on our traditional offerings. So that was a real difference we surfaced, and we started putting together a real plan to get results. The other thing that's great about the tools of thinking process is that we made the statement, we realized that sales need to confidently be able to speak to the value. So we set a plan, and we actually made changes. We created training. We used data to mine and come up with ways to contact the member to show them they had an opportunity to use the product. And that's shown great success. But we even went to the extent of having unrefusable offer workshops. Also from It's Not Luck, there's a way to look at the value of our offering in new ways, and we did that. We actually changed the value statements, and we really improved the way our sales could talk about it. So all these things led to increased confidence, but also on the product support side, we gave them new tools so that they could get information quickly, and we then circled back to sales and showed them they could now be more confident in the product. All these things working at the same time really got things moving. We saw results, but there are a lot of methodologies out there. I want to look quickly at what we thought was so unique in this. First of all, in 4 days of work over the course of a week, we really saw new creative ideas, breaking some conflicts and even places where people were stuck for months or even years. Also, people in the room were starting to look at the success of the organization, not just of their department. That finger pointing was reduced and people worked together. Also, we did step in the shoes of our customers to really see that from their eyes, this did not have the value. Instead of saying, what's wrong with them that they don't see it, by looking at it from their view, we said, aha, of course they don't see the value. If I were them, I don't know that I would see it. And that's a whole different way to look at things. But also, we did not ignore the internal aspect of it. We said, let's look at our sales team and be honest about their skills and help bridge the gap between the different teams internally. Again, I think these things apply to from the military to manufacturing, all types of companies, because you're all dealing with humans in all these spots. You're going to find some of these same things. But really, using these tools and getting them in for a workshop, people were really excited about it. And again, thinking with one mind instead of just looking locally. Some things that we learned from this that might surprise you. We had skeptics in our workshop, people that didn't want to give the thinking process a chance, and that were sure they knew what this problem was and maybe were really against one team or another. But they were actually most valuable because it led to better solutions. So have them in your workshops. Also, we made this an intensive project. We made people give up full days with us. And that actually was a good thing. Why? Because everyone's in that room thinking strategically. You have them following trains of thought. You have so much more efficiency when you can do it all together and keep it together. And people like the excitement of working on these half days and full days. And other times we've tried to do it in like hour and a half meetings. It doesn't work as well. So keep that in mind. Also, define your scope. What happened to us was we said we were doing this whole project to get sales to that level with a thinking process. So even though once we got to implementing our plan, we weren't used to the tools and we handed it off to other people, we weren't using the thinking process anymore, but everyone still judged it as the thinking process. And we thought it's more fair to stay at the start. We're going to create the plan and then give it to the organization to put into place. The biggest thing I would want to warn you about is that handoffs, in this case from the people who are in the workshop making the strategic decisions, over to the implementation teams that were going to do the work, that is the trickiest part. You assume, because you did this intensive thinking, that other people are in the same place that you are, and they're not. There needs to be work done to bring them in and explain to them again. So if you could think about who might really have to implement this and have them in the room, or keep them up to speed and apprised throughout, that could be so much more efficient. And you could save some of the extra effort that we had to go through. Also, we had really bad timing. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to have this massive 6-week implementation project start in August when the head of our product was away getting married in New Zealand, and the head of our marketing was off who was also a Jonah, was off at the Cape for 2 weeks of vacation. Timing matters. But still, we were seen to really change something. People said, wow, that was special. Just like before, people were really loving the Jonahs for this. In fact, check this out. Our CEO sent us an email that I will save forever. And the gist of it here is I was really impressed and extremely jazzed to see what we could accomplish with this process. And this, if you knew this guy is considered a maverick, and he's really not afraid to speak his mind. And when he is not happy, you definitely know. So this means much more than it would coming from just anybody. Just an amazing process. So we thought we were set, right? In fact, everybody kept asking them to help them on everything from Canada to this Friday lunch thing we have at work. Everyone wanted the Jonahs' assistance. But they also did say, you know, you still have to do all of your day jobs, which is a full plate of work for each of the 4 Jonahs. They didn't take anything away, but they went to add a lot. And then, as you all know, a little sad moment, as our product was going out to market to the investing community, the financial world took just a terrible nosedive. That whole fall was considered a slow motion crash, and we're still kind of getting our bearings from that. So the targets that they set look like just laughable, but we know that the improvements in staying steady was actually an achievement in itself. So we're thinking that everybody wanted us and was thinking we were great. We have plans to make more Jonahs at Liquidnet. Liquidnet finally sees the value of thoughtful planning, and they're ready to do it right the first time. Not really. Once that financial problems happened, yeah. We told them we could get more business, and our customers just didn't have the money. They didn't have the business. Everyone went back into panic mode, which you may have seen also at your own companies. Panic mode means you do what you're comfortable doing. They didn't want to stop and think anymore. They actually sent out things like, everyone, no matter where you are, send in all the ideas you have and start running on them, please. It was not what we were really going for. So our lesson really, go with the people that come to you. Don't sit around looking for the perfect project if you want to apply theory of constraints tools. In fact, if you go with the people that come to you, you have instant buy-in. They want to be your partner, so it's more likely to work, and they'll see the value faster. Also, those smaller successes will build confidence, and you'll see a snowball effect, and you'll be put on bigger projects. It's going to get into the organization, even with the smaller projects. It doesn't have to be the big bang. Most of all, don't doubt the process. We doubted initially. We said, can this stuff work in a service company? It absolutely worked. It worked in learning and development. It worked in sales. It's worked for me, even personally, and just changed the way I think and the way I approach it. And every time I doubt it, I say I shouldn't have doubted the process. Page.
So as Brian said, the market really shifted under our feet. We knew what it is, the big project that we were going to do next. We were getting everything all lined up, and then we were told there's just really not the opportunity for that right now. We've got to keep focused, do things on the way we're used to doing them. And frankly, you guys all have jobs. You know, this Jonah thing, it's good, and we get it, and there's definitely a time for it, but right now, we need you to do the jobs we actually hired you to do. So we felt a little lost. We had spent all this time and energy, and we were really excited about it, and we didn't know what to do then. But that wasn't good enough for us. We still recognized the value and the potential of making this impact with the thinking process at our company. We didn't want to just let that go away. So our decision was to go back to the root of everything. We went back to New Haven, where we learned the techniques, and we really said, what? Don't you always associate yourselves with Star Wars? No? That's the first time you've seen that? Bob sent us that. That's from his honeymoon. We went back and we said, okay, we've got this obstacle that we're facing. We've got this goal, roll out the thinking process, make the company better using these techniques, but something's in our way. So we actually used, hey, here's a bright idea, use the tools that you learned on the problem that you have, since that's what the tools were created for. And it was great. We spent a full day up there. We mentioned Bob Jacob because he really was there at New Haven, and helped us see things from a different way. He said, you know what? These are all tools in your toolkit. We taught you one way to do it over a period of 2 weeks, a very structured way, but that was just to teach you. These are tools in your toolkit. Pull them out at the appropriate times. You don't have to go all in, figure out. So that it really changed, we changed what we were doing. We were able to adapt our strategy because the market had changed under us, the environment had changed, and we needed to change our plans along with it. So, where are we today? We were lucky. There was that initial excitement from that initial workshop. One of the salespeople said, we've got this business in Boston, and again, it's really not as successful as it should be. There's tremendous opportunity for us there, and we're just not seeing it, but we know it's there. Jonahs, come, help us. And so we went, and it was great. Since it was requested of us, we were able to say the best way to do this. They had some experience with it before. We didn't have to do all that explaining. We did focused days. Can't stress that enough. 3 half-days in 1 week. Brian touched on this before, but just to emphasize, a big mistake we made on some of the other projects we tried to do is we tried to accommodate to other people's schedules. So you would do an hour here on a Tuesday. Then the following Tuesday, you do another hour. You spend the first 20 minutes catching up on what you did during that last hour. Biggest waste of time. If people can't make the commitment, don't even start it, frankly. Mm-hmm. You've got to do that focus time. You get so much more out of it. Brian also mentioned, set your scope. One of our lessons learned. Tell them, we are going to deliver. We're going to work with you to pull out all of your ideas, all of the challenges, help you create a plan of what it is that you have to change. Then you own it. You guys are the ones requesting this. You want to make the change? We're going to help guide you and give you the answers of what you think it is that you need to change. But then you own it from there. And we produced a report in plain English. So those people who were in the room got it, had a quick refresher, and they had a tool for them to use with those people who were not able to be in the room, but were key to the success of implementing these changes. Some of the other areas of the organization were facing challenges. Technology, HR, they had a process that wasn't working for them together. HR is saying, we have a goals process. Corporate has a goal. Departments have a goal. That trickles down to the individual goals. There was a flaw in the way that we were doing it, and technology and HR just didn't have the same language to communicate to one another. They really threw up their hands and they said, we need someone to help. So they called on the Jonahs. We actually have a distribution list on our email list called the Jonah team, so you can email us for help. And they did. They said, we need someone, we need any process to help us through. And at the end, they were saying, we are so glad that we called you. We, again, took their information and helped them see it in a different way, a more complete way, walked them through the process so they knew what it is they had to do. And when we presented that information back to them, we used language that made sense to them. In the book, you hear UDIs and FRT and IO map and all this stuff. Quite simply, what you're saying is, here's what the world looks like today. Here's the world that you want to create for tomorrow. Here's how you think that you can create that world. Using language like that, standard language, really helped individuals connect to the work that they were doing and going to have to carry forward. Another thing we did was we looked for opportunities internally that we might be able to not actually just use the processes, but teach others the processes. We had an internal conference where people were learning about the business and being exposed to different things that other people were doing. And we capitalized on that and taught people how to do clouds. We picked up that one technique and said, this is something that is a standalone item other people can use and really drive things forward in both their personal lives and in the work environment. And they got it. So overall, the lessons learned, we certainly had a lot. It's been a year, a little more than a year that we started this journey. And to boil it down into just a few bullet points. Don't forget your lessons learned. And frankly, don't forget our lessons learned. Everybody makes mistakes. The worst thing you can do is to forget about them and do them again and again and again. You know, some of the key things like really spending that focused time, letting people clearly know expectations of what it is you're going to deliver and how they're going to have to interact with it after the fact, so important. If you can't get adoption from the top down, try from the bottom up. This was our changing our strategy. right? We had those projects lined up. We were ready to go and do the next big thing. But that leadership really had to focus differently, and they couldn't commit the people's time and resources to do things the proper way. So that path really wasn't available to us when everything changed. We found other avenues, other sources that they wanted assistance with and process with. We moved in that direction more holistically. If you can't change the world, change it one piece of it at a time, right? We can't always do the whole process all at once. So find those pieces that make sense at different times and use them, or let others be exposed to those techniques. And even if you don't actively use this, what you will find is that it changes the way that you think. When you interact with challenges, when you process situations that you're up against, you're going to realize that those clouds that we draw, you don't actually just draw them on paper. When people are talking to you, they actually, it's kind of crazy, they start to form in your mind. You start to visualize the conflict that someone's talking to you about. And it's incredibly powerful. And you're able to think much faster on your feet and really help others deal with whatever situations they're facing that much faster. And finally, don't go it alone. And I mean this in a couple of different ways. The first is, if you do have the opportunity, try and get trained with someone else in your organization that you're going to be able to lean on for support, that can speak the same language, that you can really push each other forward and remind you of what's the next step that you're supposed to take and what tool do we use here. And the other thing is about leveraging the resources that are around as well. Susan Berglund was just amazing answering phone calls from me on Mondays at 10 o'clock in the evening, when really she should be doing something other than talking about work with me in a different time zone. But they're there, they're around to help and really help drive us forward. Their goal was to help us succeed so that we were able to do this on our own and take the most out of what it was that we learned. So the best we can say is our journey isn't done. We by no means have the whole entire company thinking the way we want them to think, but it's been a real tremendous experience and a bumpy road that we've still managed to survive and continue to move forward from. We hope that we imparted some of our knowledge onto you in the lessons, and if there are any questions, we would certainly take them now or throughout the rest of the conference.
Yeah, we'll be around the entire conference, so anytime you can come up to either one of us. We'd love to talk about anything you want. Okay, thank you. Susan Berglund. Okay.
Don't go back yet.
Oh.
Please join me one more time in thanking Paige and Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.